Okay, class, lecture number 17. We're moving right along here, folks. So you're technically 2/3 completed with this course after your examination, which will be coming up after this lecture. Not today, but during the next class session anyway. And what we have today, we're going to be beginning World War II. And this will not be on this block of instruction. This section here will be on your third block of instruction. Last time we were together, we talked about that of Poland. This is the beginnings of World War I, at least in Europe, World War II in Europe anyway. We talked about Poland, the Blitzkrieg that took place, lightning warfare. You need to recognize that term, if you will. I think I mentioned to you about France, Imagine No Line. We also talked about the Battle of Britain. Part of that was the Blitz. That was just a wholesale bombing of the major cities and some minor cities which were found in the United Kingdom. We also went into the election of 1940, and FDR overwhelmingly won that third election of his. All right, we mentioned that of Operation Barbarossa. Adolf Hitler's worst mistake. It's his worst nightmare here. My friends, that was the invasion of the Soviet Union by the Germans. We also talked about the Atlantic Charter. Under the Atlantic Charter, FDR and Winston Churchill both committed to the mutual destruction of Nazi Germany. And then we shifted over, went into Japan. I'll show you a likeness here of Tojo. I was trying to find that the other day, and I could not. Hideki Tojo, they referred to him as the Razor. I'll show you a photograph in just a second. Folks, it's in the previous chapter. And the attack on Pearl Harbor, Tora. It was a knockout blow to the United States Navy. We did repair it, and we repaired very quickly here. But it's going to give the Japanese 18 months, a year and a half of time with that. All right, and we are going to recover, like I said, very, very quickly. So let's get into World War II here as we know it here, folks. And in Tora, World War II is going to thrust the United States into the worst war in the history of mankind. The casualties for this war will be 4 times as great as what it was in World War I, and that's for the Americans, and it's also for that of Europeans. In fact, it's estimated here that in Russia, the Soviet Union, that there were 20 million casualties. Can you imagine that? 20 million casualties. In World War I, they had slightly less than 2 million casualties. So it was a huge event here and a world war here, folks. All right, for Americans, most days were just like today. You take a look out your window right now and you see what today looks like. I'll look out my window, bright sunny day. I don't know what it's going to be like for you anyway. And that's the way it was for Americans. That is, unless you receive the Western Union telegram, which brought tragedy to your family in all probability. But for America, we were spared the discomforts of war as far as destruction of property here, public and private property. In Europe, it was entirely different from that. You saw the photographs, from the Blitz, the bombing of London just the other day. All right here. So that's a part of it. And another thing for Americans here, it's going to bring about a unity. Americans, after Pearl Harbor, we're going to become galvanized literally overnight. And what we've talked about earlier about isolationism, internationalism, for the isolationism part, my friends, it will end in a blink of an eye. All right, so let's go back to my camera here. I've got a lot of things to talk to you about today, and we don't need to waste any time with this. Plus, I have a review in store for you, and this review will try to get you prepared, if you will, for your next examination. All right, here we can see a likeness here of Hideki Tojo, the Razor. I think I gave you the quotation the other day. Sometimes it's better just to close your eyes and take the plunge, such as at Pearl Harbor. At the end of the war, I probably shouldn't tell you now, but at the end of the war, he will be tried for war crimes and he will be executed. All right, Tora, Tiger, mission accomplished here. For the United States, we suffered 406,000 deaths in this war, and there were about 600-something-thousand injuries. All right, we already talked about unity here, and I will tell you for Great Britain and the Soviet Union, this is not a matter for the Great Britain and Soviet Union. This is not a matter of trying to plead or bargain. This is a matter of survival. For Great Britain and the Soviet Union, they were literally within hours, if not days, capitulating to the Germans here. All right, for the United States and for the Pacific, in the United States and Great Britain and the Pacific, it was not a matter of winning there. It was just trying to stave off defeat. Okay, so the Japanese have bought a little bit of time. All right, now this is unimaginable here, my friends, and what I'm going to do here, let's hold off for a second. I'm going to try to use my textbook, and I just happened to look over here to a different page here at the beginnings of chapter 26. Someone taught U.S. ships sunk by whatever. When I was in the military, we always had a saying here, loose lips sink ships. Loose lips sink ships. And what I mean by that is you keep your mouth shut because there is always somebody listening. I know from my experience in Germany in 1972 and 1973 that there were always agents from other countries that were out there in the gas houses, in the bars there, trying to pick up on information from American soldiers anyway. Loose lips sink ships. Okay, so let's go to this map right here, and this map is on page 706 in your textbook. I'm going to try to do it this way. The maps that I have behind me are just a little bit too far here. So I want you to see where the Philippines are located. And if we look at the Philippines are located right here. And so we'll go back and we'll try to do this side by side here. And within 10 hours after Pearl Harbor, and this is unbelievable here, my friends, but that Japan actually attacked Manila. Now, this is Clark Field in Manila. We still have Clark Field that's present there today. Our aircraft, this is under General MacArthur, by the way, and General MacArthur, some people refer to him as Dugout Doug. Dugout Doug, that's not a very nice thing to refer to him as. And for MacArthur always referred to himself in the first person. Now MacArthur says this, rather than saying, I want you to do this, MacArthur wants you to do this. Kind of a pompous individual here, but anyway, more on him as we move through this, folks. But within 10 hours, Japan aviators actually attacked Clark Field in the Philippines. Our aircraft were lined up wingtip to wingtip, and the Japanese just strafed that flight line and just dismantled the United States Air Force presence or the Army Air Corps presence there in just a matter of minutes there. Within 24 hours, Japan landed troops in the Philippines itself. In the Philippines. All right, we had an American presence in the Philippines, by the way, and they are understaffed. They are not equipped very well. We'll come back to that in just a few seconds. Within a few days, 3 days, Guam was taken by Japan. Within 5 days, Wake Island was taken by Japan. The British province, so to speak, at Hong Kong was taken by Japan. The British stronghold in Singapore, sometimes referred to as the Maginot Line of Asia anyway. 80,000 British soldiers were surrendered to a Japanese force of 1/3 that size here. It is inexcusable. Like I said, in the Pacific, it's not a matter of winning. It's just trying to stave off defeat. Japan next moved into the Dutch East Indies. They took that area. They took Burma. Myanmar is what it is known as today. But let's go back to the Philippines here, my friends, and you can see where the Philippines are right here. And let's go down to a place here which is called Bataan. It's about where my fingertip is here. I made a little illustration on the next slide. Now I'll show that to you in a few minutes here, folks. And, well, in fact, here it is right here at the top of the page. I'm sorry, I'd already flipped my page here. And Bataan is the southern part. It forms a little peninsula, such as what you're seeing right here. And this is where the American forces and the Filipino forces were pushed back to. And I'm guessing that there were probably about 12,000 Americans there and about 50,000 Filipinos that were pushed back into the pocket here. The Japanese soldiers were advancing here. They were very well equipped here for the American soldiers. Shortage of food, shortage of ammunition, shortage of good weapons, if you will, shortage of medical supplies. And where General MacArthur was over here on an island about 2 or 3 miles away, which is called Corregidor. He and his family, his son, his wife, and a caretaker by the name of Achu, just like you were sneezing here, folks. And they were present there down in a bunker, and that's where MacArthur picked up the nickname here, Dugout Doug. And it looked like it was all up for the soldiers here, the Americans, Filipinos here at Bataan. There was no way out. They were trapped by the Japanese. And so the decision was made that those Americans and Filipinos would be sacrificed. They would be surrendered. And for Douglas MacArthur, he and his son and his wife and Achu, they were evacuated. They were evacuated out of Corregidor. MacArthur was a 4-star general at that time, and they were all placed on what is called a patrol torpedo boat. This is a PT boat, such as what you're seeing here, if I can get it straightened up anyway. An Elco PT boat. And for General MacArthur and his family, they were whisked away to Australia. All right, out of harm's way. When MacArthur arrived in Australia, he delivered a, shall we say, a what am I trying to say? A press announcement is what I'm trying to say here, folks, as I'm muddling around with that. And when she made the statement, I came through and I shall return. The press reported it as, I shall return. I shall return to the Philippines here. So, those Americans and Filipinos were left behind, and they were left behind at Bataan. All right, and thus we're going to see here, folks, did I write it down? And I did write it down here. For the Americans and the Filipinos, they will experience one of the worst atrocities of the war, which is referred to as Bataan Death March. And for these Americans here and the Filipinos, they're going to be marched 65 miles up to a rail center here so that they can be placed on rail cars and carried out to ships that will transport them up into Manchuria, a place, some of them went to a place which is called Mukden, and that's where they'll spend the duration of the war. And for these Americans and Filipinos, if you even stumbled, if you went down on a knee, you would be bayoneted in the back by the Japanese. You remember that you're starving, you're have great thirst, and if any of the Filipino natives that you were passing walking through a village there tried to assist you, you would be killed with that. And I had my cousin. And I met my cousin. He was my dad's age, and he's not living now. He died about 5 years ago. But my cousin was a survivor of that Bataan Death March. And he spent 4 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp at Mukden. In fact, after the war, that's what he named his house. He named it Mukden. And I'll tell you the story. I've never seen anybody like this. And I would ask you in class right now, do any of you have a hatred towards Asians, have a hatred towards Japanese? And I've never had a student that had hatred towards Japanese. But my cousin was a different story here, my friends. He absolutely despised the Japanese and their atrocities to the Americans. Some of you perhaps have seen the movie Unbroken with Louis Zamperini, and that's exactly the way that it was here. And I can remember one time my dad and I, we always visited my cousin about every other year. And we would always drive, and I was always given the one that would drive to Columbus, Ohio, and that's where my cousin lived there. And one year my dad said, why don't we fly? And I said, great, that'd save me from having to drive. And we flew up to Columbus and rented a car and drove out to his place in Westerville, Ohio, my cousin's house in Westerville, Ohio. And I didn't even think about it at the time, but the car that I had rented was a Toyota. And when I arrived and pulled into the driveway, I have never seen anything like this before here, folks. My cousin came boiling out the side door there, and at the top of his lungs, and using the worst type language, was get that blankety-blank Japanese car, he actually used the word Jap car, off of my property. And I had to actually drive that car out of sight, down the street there, and park it down the street. That's a true story here, my friends. All right, so anyway, let's go on back to my camera here, and let's pick up our story here. Now, for the Americans, we're going to develop two operations here. It's actually Operation Cartwheel, and it's in two offenses, two operations within that. And one of these offenses will be for General MacArthur. And General MacArthur, by the way, General MacArthur was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was also promoted to 5-star general. You know, Dugout Doug, who bugged out on his troops right there, is now promoted to 5-star general and given the Medal of Honor. I don't understand that here. All right, and for what MacArthur was going to do was to lead the American forces. Let's see if I can do this right here, folks, working upside down, and go out of Australia, and from Australia go into New Guinea. Here's New Guinea right here, and then make his way back to the Philippines. Remember what MacArthur said, I came through and I shall return. The other operation would be placed in the hands of a very, very capable Navy Admiral, Chester Nimitz. And I love this guy. He is a magnificent leader here. And in fact, we have a carrier today named USS Nimitz. And his objective was to undergo island hopping. And what I mean by island hopping is that we would start over here and begin to just hop island, all the way back to Japan. Now, if you look at that, put all that together there, is there really a need for MacArthur to send his American forces here from Australia to New Guinea back to the Philippines? If we have island hopping that carries us all the way back to Japan, I think that's all we need. But what are you going to do with a 5-star general that has the Medal of Honor? You got to give him something to do. Our first significant victory here, my friends, was the Battle of the Coral Sea. The Battle of the Coral Sea, I can't see exactly where it is, but it's down in this area right through here. You can look on the map with your good eyes. I'm too far away from it to see where it is. But that was our first significant victory, and actually that was not only a marginal victory. That was in May of 1942. And what the United States needs very desperately here, we need a shot in the arm. We need a victory of some type here to give us a little morale booster. So what we're going to do in April of 1942, and this was done by a Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. Jimmy Doolittle is later referred to as Doolittle's Raid, and it's going to make use of 16 B-25 bombers. Now, these are Mitchells. That's what they're referred to as B-25 Mitchells. This is what it looks like here. It's not a really large bomber, but it's a lot larger than a aircraft that fly off of an aircraft carrier. Here's another likeness here of the B-25 Mitchell. There it is right there. It's being loaded with its bombs. And what the plan was to take this B-25 Mitchell, 16 of those, if you will, and place them on an aircraft carrier. Now, they are not designed to take off from an aircraft carrier, and even if they could get airborne, there's no way you're going to bring them back. They can't come back and land on an aircraft carrier. But the idea was to lighten the bomber, the B-25, as much as possible here, load it with bombs, and place these 16 on the aircraft carrier, which is called the USS Hornet, and then launch them as close to Japan as possible, trying to maintain silence here, and then fly over Tokyo and drop their bombs on Tokyo. No way that you're coming back, so your only recourse there is to fly across to where China is, where Mongolia is, where Soviet Union is, and to land over there. And would you believe this? Of those 16 B-25 Mitchells, we actually got all 16 airborne, flew over Japan, dropped the bombs there, and a couple of the B-25s ran out of fuel and did land in the ocean. But the remainder of them actually went over. One landed in the Soviet Union, and the remainder that did not crash landed in China. And of 80 crew members, I believe it was, we had 71 that actually survived. So Doolittle's Raid there, I think, is a marvelous achievement, and it gave us a little boost here, my friends, a little morale builder. Okay, so another thing that we needed here, we needed a naval victory. The Japanese were just too strong on the high seas. Let's see if I can find where I'm going here. And I want to go up to the area of Midway. And if you look here, this is Midway Island. Supposedly that's midway across the Pacific Ocean. And let me slide this over the other direction so you can still see Midway. You still see this likewise. If I can get this positioned properly here. And we knew the Japanese. The Japanese were on their way to Midway. The Hornet had launched off the area of Midway Island. That's a U.S. possession at that time. And we knew the Japanese were going to retaliate and try to punish us, if you will, and take over Midway itself. I hear a lawnmower outside my office. Here, I swear to goodness, it's every time I start a lecture, we have some kind of interruption. But the Japanese were on the way. And what the naval pilots were doing, and some of you may have watched this movie, Midway. It came out in 2019, several earlier versions of it too. We were trying to locate them, locate the Japanese fleet. And for the days of June the 3rd through June the 6th of 1942, we kept sending up little sorties, forays, trying to find a Japanese fleet. And you would think that you could find these huge aircraft carriers, but we could not find them. We honestly could not. And then finally here on June the 6th, and we finally, one of our aviators found them. Things began to work very quickly. Radio signals were sent back to Midway. We scrambled our aircraft, swooped down upon the Japanese aircraft carriers, which fortunately for us and unfortunately for them, the Japanese airplanes were out on the flight decks there being refueled. And we swooped in and just, we lost a number of aircraft ourselves here, but we swooped in and we destroyed 322 Japanese airplanes. These are airplanes that are almost impossible to replace for Japan in this part of the war. We also destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers at this Battle of Midway. An unbelievable United States victory. All right. And I encourage you once again, to watch the movies on this. So let's move on here. And some of the other engagements here. Let's get this back up here. We had a tremendous battle that took place here over the course of about 6 months. Let me get this over a little bit. And I am not having a good time with this here, folks. And this will take place at an island which is called Guadalcanal. I'm trying to find it here, and right down here is where it is located, right there. And here's where the Battle of the Coral Sea was located there, and there's Guadalcanal. Let me get this back on the screen here so you can see how to spell it. 6 months, a little bit longer than that anyway. I would have this article out for you right now, if you were in the classroom anyway, about Guadalcanal. A bloody engagement there. It's a fun campaign if you want to read about it. Solomon Islands itself. We had Americans there. We also had Americans, I'm talking about Army. We also had the Marines that were present there. And this was just brutal hand-to-hand combat here in Guadalcanal. In my estimation, it actually ended up in a stalemate with that. Now, an individual I'd like to address for just a second. I'll let you look at the name here, folks. His name is Ishiroku Yamamoto. All right, look at the name there, Ishiroku Yamamoto. He was a Japanese admiral, and he is the one that orchestrated the plan on the attack on Pearl Harbor. And he was against the plan. He knew, and he actually knew that this would give, that if it was successful, it would give Japan only a limited amount of time before the Americans recover. For Ishiroku, 56-6 is what the name translates to mean here. For Yamamoto, he had actually spent some time in the United States and had received education in the United States. Loved to play poker. He honestly did. He liked to play poker with Americans. All right, so that's what Pearl Harbor was for the Japanese. It was a great big gamble here. Well, and we were well aware that Yamamoto had designed a plan. And through the use of magic, and you know what I'm talking about with magic here, folks, JN-25, that's breaking the Japanese code, we knew that Yamamoto was traveling by aircraft, and we actually knew what type of aircraft he was going to be on, and he was going to travel to a Japanese-held island, which is called Bougainville. So we risked letting the Japanese know that we had broken their code when we sent out an assassination team, and we sent out 5 P-38 Lightnings and 1 full aircraft, and we sent them out on an assassination mission to shoot Yamamoto's aircraft out of the sky and to take his life. And by golly, we did so. And we assassinated Ishiroku Yamamoto here. The Japanese never figured it out. They never figured out that we had broken their code. If you find out that somebody has broken your code, then you now have to break the new code, and that is a challenge to you, folks. So it was a real risk on our part, but nonetheless, we came out luckily with that. We came out successful. All right, so we're going to begin. Oh, and before I get into this, in the air, for our aviators, we did not have very good aircraft. We were using such aircraft as the P-40 and the P-40 Warhawk. Sometimes it's called the Tomahawk. It's a heavy aircraft. It's not very fast, and it was just outclassed by Japanese aircraft, particularly the Japanese Zero. A wonderful aircraft. It was the best in the Pacific at that time. For many of our aviators at that time, they referred to the P-40 not as a P-40, they referred to it as the P-400. I want you to look at that, the P-400 instead of the P-40. Why do we call it the P-400? Because we have a P-40 with a 0 on its tail. All right, if you understand what I'm talking about with that, you'll have to think about that for a few minutes. But by 1943, we developed 2 amazing aircraft. This aircraft here, which is called the F-4F Wildcat, and even better than that was the F-6F Hellcat. And these 2 aircraft right here were just unmatched by the Japanese. And that changes things out in the air here, folks, in the Pacific here. Okay, wonderful aircraft. You were in class right now. I will show you photographs of both of those. All right, so let's begin our island hopping campaign. And let me muddle around with this for a second here. Let's see here. get everything positioned here properly here, folks, and I'm struggling with that. So, on the island hopping campaign, let's start down here in Tarawa. Tarawa is in the Gilbert Islands here. Here it is right here. You can use your textbook on this. And we will be successful here in November of 1943. From there, we're going to move up into the Marshall Islands here, take Kwajalein, Eniwetok. Here, I'm spelling it for you right there, Kwajalein, Eniwetok. You and I go there today. We tested hydrogen bombs there in the 1950s here, folks, and those areas are still hot. And let's see what else here. You track on the map here. Let me get this position right here for you. We'll also retake Guam, and you can see where Guam is located right here. From there, we'll take Tinian. We'll also take regain control of Saipan. Where is Saipan here? It's over near Tinian, and I do not see it there here. All right, and from there, we'll go into Peleliu. Peleliu. You can use your textbook map here, folks, and here is Peleliu, which is right there. I still do not see Saipan, and Saipan was a bloodbath. Anyway, and on we go here to Iwo Jima. And you can see Iwo Jima, which is present. Where am I? Here. Iwo Jima, which is right here. This campaign will start in February, and it's February through March of 1945. And I'll tell you, in Iwo Jima, this was something we encountered that was different. In Iwo Jima, up till Iwo Jima, the Japanese would always meet us on the beaches. Always on the beaches here, try to drive us back. But when we went into Iwo Jima, the Japanese did not meet us on the beaches. In fact, we could find no Japanese whatsoever. Now, Iwo Jima, which I've not been there, I'd like to go there, by the way, but Iwo Jima is an island. It is located 750 miles away from Tokyo, well, I should say from Japan anyway, not Tokyo. And on Iwo Jima, there's this big mountain. All right, the island is flat, other than we have this large mountain here, which is called Mount Suribachi. Mount Suribachi. You can see what it looks like right there. We could not find the Japanese on the beaches, and I wonder where the Japanese are. Well, you probably have figured it out right now. The Japanese are on Mount Suribachi. So our ships that dropped off these Marines, largely Marines, our ships were cruising along the coastline here, and we were wondering, how are these Marines progressing? And because we could not see them here. And then finally, one of the lookouts, looking from one of the bridge and one of the ships there, said, Captain, I want you to look up at the top of the hill. And when they looked up at the top of the hill here at Mount Suribachi, and I'm trying to draw this here, folks, lo and behold, there was an American flag that had been hoisted up there. And we knew we had been successful at Mount Suribachi and Iwo Jima. Perhaps you have seen this before, and here's a photograph here up on Mount Suribachi. If you look off in the distance there, you can actually see the ocean, which is down below, and those are our United States Marines that are hoisting the flag of the United States into position. Actually, this is a staged photograph here. This photograph, by the way, was taken by what was his name? Joe Rosenbaum. And he wrote, later a book came out which is called Flags of Our Fathers. Flags of Our Fathers, which addresses that. I don't think I got that name right, by the way, here, and I know it like the back of my hand because I've read this book on so many times, wrote so many occasions. Joe Rosenthal. All right, watch the movie Flags of Our Fathers too. Actually, what happened here was this. This is a recreated photograph. It actually was a video that Joe Rosenthal took here. Joe Rosenthal saw the original flag being erected, which was a smaller flag, and so somebody dug out a larger flag. Those Marines that hoisted the first flag were long gone. They'd gone to other combat missions here, and this is a reenactment of it where they took several corpsmen, Marine corpsmen, and a larger flagpole, and they, like I said, it was video footage, and this is just a clip out of that. But anyway, that's the emblem today of the United States Marine Corps, by the way, folks. And if you go to Arlington National Cemetery, you will see a most magnificent large statue there of that of Iwo Jima. Okay, so let's move right along here, folks. The United States at Iwo Jima lost 7,000 killed, Japanese 22,000 killed. All right, let's move a little bit closer here, and we are going to get approximately 370 miles away from Japan at a place which is called Okinawa. Here's Okinawa. If we can make it to Okinawa and take that island, we can create airfields there, and we can touch Japan at will. All right, and this was a bloodbath that took place in Okinawa. We had 50,000 American casualties there, Americans killed there. The Japanese had 120,000, it is estimated anyway. And half of the American casualties were sailors. So how does that happen here? Well, I'll tell you in just a second here, good folks. But I want to stop for a second. Some of you probably have seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge. And it's a true story of Hacksaw Ridge, and the young man there, who was a conscientious objector here, actually did perform in the way that the young man did there in the movie itself here. Great movie. I recommend it to you, good folks. It is it's a very, very bloody, very gory movie here. But anyway, and that's pretty much the way that it was, trying to dislodge those Japanese, and that was very, very challenging to do so. All right, so I want to talk to you about something else here. It was in the Okinawa campaign that we get our first real exposure to the Japanese using kamikaze. Kamikaze, these are the original suicide bombers, by the way. Kamikaze translates to mean divine wind, in which you, as a Japanese aviator, you will literally have your funeral before you take your final flight. Your last meal, your last supper, so to speak, there. And even you may have your family members to be in attendance there. And so you, as the aviator, you'll have a 500-pound bomb, 1,000-pound bomb present in the fuselage of the aircraft. You're not going to drop that bomb. In fact, you're going to be bolted into the cockpit so that you cannot depart. And the first thing you do is when you take off on your final flight is try to find an aircraft carrier. If you're a Japanese aviator, can't find an aircraft carrier, let's go to a battleship. Can't find a battleship, let's go to a cruiser, let's go to a destroyer, whatever you can find, and then you fly your aircraft right into the side of the ship. And of course, you take your life, but you also take the life here. I'm not doing very well with that. Many, many other individuals. And you can see in this photograph, and this was an actual photograph, this was taken on the USS Missouri. Mighty Mo is what they referred to it as. If you look to the side here, you look to the side down here, you can see these pom-pom guns that are trying to shoot down this Japanese kamikaze. Here he is right here. This kamikaze who is flying into the side here of Mighty Mo. And I was always curious about this, what happened. And as it turned out here, the aircraft, the Japanese aircraft that was kamikaze flying into Mighty Mo, it got too close to the ship. I don't know if it was hit by pom-pom guns or not, but the wing of the aircraft hit the battleship here, and when it did so, it caused the aircraft just to go spinning out into the ocean, and it crashed out in the ocean. All right, so anyway, those are kamikaze here. Okay, so shall we go back? All right, so I want to move on here, folks. If we made our way to Okinawa, and we did make our way to Okinawa, and so for the United States, see, we developed a plan which was called Operation Olympic. Operation Olympic was designed to take place in November of 1945, and this was the invasion of Kyushu. Kyushu is the southernmost Japanese island. This would be followed by Operation Coronet. It was designed to take place here in March of 1946, and this was the land invasion of Honshu. The land invasion of Honshu. All right, now Honshu is the major island which is found in Japan. So I'm going to go back to my camera here, and let's get a little contrast on this. And I want to try to find this for you here. And let's see here. I may have to position this over a little bit here, such as this. And here's a map that I want you to look at here. And where the island of Kyushu is located, it's the southern island. And Kyushu is this island here. During our next lecture, we will address it again. And Honshu was this island up here where Kyoto and where Tokyo is present. Now, our estimates based upon our previous campaigns in the Pacific and knowing the casualties, the losses that we had at Okinawa and Iwo Jima and Saipan and the various other places there, we were calculating that we would have 1 million American casualties for the land invasion of Japan itself. Well, that's a lot of individuals. I'm going to ask you something. What if we could develop a weapon of mass destruction, and you're the President of the United States, and you're fully aware that we may incur 1 million American casualties with a land invasion of Japan? Would you be willing to use that weapon of mass destruction on Japan itself and end the war in the snap of a finger and avoid those 1 million American casualties. Would you be willing to do so? All right, I'm going to leave you with that thought here, my friends, and our next time together, we will address that topic once again. But now I want to go to the European Theater of Operations, away from the PTO, the Pacific Theater of Operations, and let's go to the European Theater of Operations, the ETO. And when we arrive in Europe, for the Americans anyway, it's not like in the Pacific. We're not fighting alone. We have Great Britain that is present with us here. We have Free French. We have troops that are from Belgium, some that survived from Hitler's attack on Belgium. We have some Free Poles that are present. There are Canadians that are present here. We have Australians. We have New Zealanders. So in the European Theater of Operations, we're not on our own. We have other allies with us. All right, so let's go back to the camera here, and we shall continue with this. Okay, and there's where we made the estimate here at the top here. Oh, by the way, I didn't quite finish that section on Japan here. In May of 1945, 324 B-29 super fortresses. Our next lecture, I'll show you what one looks like here. But we firebombed Tokyo. I didn't write that down, but we firebombed Tokyo. 267,000 buildings were incinerated, and for Tokyo itself, 185,000 casualties. All right, so let's go into Europe here. So here's what we addressed a few minutes ago. Those are the countries that are going to be assisting us. The Army Chief of Staff at this time was George C. Marshall. George Catlett Marshall, and I like this guy very, very much here. Marshall Space Flight Center is named after him. Other things are named after him. I'm not going to give you that. Here's what he looks like. George C. Marshall. He is a 5-star general, by the way. He is not a combat general in World War II. He is a strategist. And George C. Marshall wanted a cross-channel invasion. That's the way I write cross-channel invasion, in the spring of 1943. Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union was in support of that, but FDR and particularly Winston Churchill did not want to do that, and I think they were rightful in their judgment there. For the United States, we were just not battle experienced enough to go nose to nose with the Germans at that point. I think we would have had a real licking if we had tried to do so. And so what the plan was, and this is what Churchill was advocating, was to remove the Nazis and the Italians from North Africa. Now the Germans and Nazis are referred to as the Africa Corps. They're under the command here of Field Marshal, and this is my favorite all-time leader, military leader anyway, was a guy who was known as Erwin Rommel. He's a German, by the way. We gave him the title the Desert Fox. The Desert Fox. This is Africa Corps. All right, so I'm going to go back to my camera here, and here's what we're going to do here. By the way, we're going to, for the Americans, we're going to undergo what is referred to as Operation Torch, and we're going to make our way into northern Africa here, into Morocco at Casablanca. We'll also land American forces here in Algiers, at Oman, and Algiers, and this is Algeria, by the way. All right, that's known as Operation Torch. The defense of this area was done by the Vichy French. They are not the Germans, and we did not have much of a problem in moving those individuals, moving the Vichy French out. Now, on the opposite side, which would be present over here, let me get right here, and the opposite side here, this is where the British and the Africa Corps are clashing with each other at El Alamein. And the British will be victorious there against Rommel. Rommel was very, very strongly outnumbered, and he was not supplied with the tanks that he needed with that. And so the British under Bernard Montgomery, they called him Monty, will push the Africa Corps in this direction. And for the Americans are coming across in this direction, such as that. I want to share a couple of photographs with you, and I'll turn the camera back on me. And this shows you a likeness here of Erwin Rommel, a great tank commander here. He was a hero of World War I. That's him in the center there. Some German soldiers that are with him under the Desert Fox itself. Okay, unfortunately, he got involved. Rommel got involved in shall we say, a conspiracy to assassinate Adolf Hitler, and they found out about it. And he was just a minor figure in that. And the SS and Gestapo gave him a choice. We're going to humiliate you in the eyes of the public, take away your pension, your wife and son will lose their benefits, or you can take your own life. And Rommel did commit suicide. Here's a photograph in the Africa campaign showing you some British desert rats. Those are the ones with the bayonets here, taking the surrender of a German vehicle. Another photograph here showing you a knocked out German vehicle, and a vehicle that is behind there, that is a British vehicle, by the way. Okay, so anyway, and that's kind of interesting. Shall we move right along here with this? Okay, here. So we landed at Iran and Algiers and Casablanca. Let you get caught up with that. And that was known as Operation Torch, by the way. And let's move right along. Our first experience in fighting the Germans was at a place which is known as Kasserine Pass. You can find it in your textbook map there, Kasserine Pass. It's right along in this area right here, Kasserine Pass. And I'll have to tell you, folks, we didn't do very well. That was our first encounter with the Germans, and they bloodied our noses, beat us up pretty bad, and it was an embarrassment for us. I guess there's a silver lining to most everything, because the United States commander was relieved of his command, and the person that will replace him is none other than this individual, another favorite of mine, and this individual's name is George Smith Patton. George Smith Patton. And this is going to change things. Patton is so different than the other American commanders. Very aggressive individual, like the limelight. If we had more time, in fact, I could spend a complete lecture talking to you about George Smith Patton. All right, the British were led by, in the Africa arena, were led by their Field Marshal, Bernard Montgomery. People called him Bernie. No friend of Patton by any means. A lot of rivalry between those two individuals. And actually for Bernard Montgomery, not a real favorite of mine, too. Okay, so anyway, here, where did I get to here? Let's move on down here. I'm reading my previous slides, what's happening here. Okay, so let's get this off the way here, and we'll move on here. All right, I'm back on track here, folks. And for also during this time, we're going to conduct a conference, and this conference will take place in January 1943. January 1943, and it takes place in Casablanca. Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill will be present for that conference. Joseph Stalin is not present here. He was demanding a cross-channel invasion, and these two individuals were just not in favor of it at that time. So Joseph Stalin pitched a little hissy fit, and he stayed in Moscow and did not attend this conference. And for FDR and Churchill, they agreed that the next objective would be Sicily. This would be referred to as Operation Husky. Operation Husky. So let's go back to our map here, and in Operation Husky here, this would be the invasion here of Sicily. This is the island of Sicily, and for the British and the Americans, they did invade that area, and 38 days later, it fell into Allied hands, so we'd been quite successful with that. That's amazing here, folks, in Sicily. And the next objective will be that of Italy, the southern parts of Italy. So if we go into the southern parts of Italy, let's go down to this area right through here, and where the British will make their invasion is up through here, and where the Americans will make their invasion will be through this area here. Oops. Right here, in a place which is called Salerno. I did not write that name out for you, Salerno. I don't understand why we made that invasion at that point. Here's where Salerno is located, where the British came in, is up through here. I've tried to draw Italy the best way I can anyway. And if you go to Salerno, you have about 50 yards of beach. Honestly, and about 50 yards of beach. And then after that, you have 50 yards of beach, and then it just goes straight up into the mountains. Why in the world somebody chose that as an invasion site, I do not have a clue. But we were successful. We honestly were successful. So I need to go back to my map here, folks, one that I designed for you the best way I can anyway. And we began to advance up through the boots, so to speak, here of Italy itself. And we made our way all the way up to this area right here, which is a mountainous region in the Apennines Mountain. And the advance for the British and the Americans came to a screeching halt. The Germans had moved 8 divisions into into Italy. They established the Gustav Line. I did not write that out for you class, but there's no way you could penetrate it. I think we would still probably be there today trying to get through that Gustav Line. It's a place there which is called Monte Cassino, high in the Apennines, and we ended up actually destroying, by bombs, we destroyed that Catholic monastery. Since that time, it's been rebuilt. So I asked you this the other day. If you cannot bust through something, you cannot get through, what can you do as an alternative? And you can go around it. And that's exactly what we did. And we mounted an amphibious invasion, and we went around it here at a place which is called Anzio. I don't know if you can read my writing, A-N-Z-I-O, Anzio. And we were very, very fortunate there, because when we went around to Anzio, the Germans almost pushed us right back into the sea. But we were able to get a toehold, and once we got a toehold there, then that meant that the American forces were behind the German forces, and now the German forces have to withdraw. And so they're going to withdraw up in this area. In the meantime, Mussolini's government had capitulated. It fell. We'll see a new leader who was pro-American that will assume the leadership of Italy itself. Mussolini fled to the north, and he was actually captured. He was captured not by the Americans, by Italian partisans. And for Adolf Hitler, he sent an amazing rescue commando group under Otto Skorzeny and went in and actually rescued Mussolini. If I can remember, and during the next lecture, I'll tell you about what finally happened to Mussolini. Okay, so I want to move on for a few minutes here, and I think I've got all of that covered for you. But in the meantime here, the Allies began the wholesale bombing of German cities. And cities, did I write it down here? And I apparently did not. But we began the bombing of the German cities here. I'm going to keep the camera down below here, folks. Leipzig, Dresden, Germany, Berlin, all the major cities in Germany we were laying bombing to. Now, it was Royal Air Force, and Royal Air Force who was bombing by nighttime raids. They were more accomplished in the Army Air Corps. We did not have the Air Force at that time. And for the Americans, we were undergoing daytime bombings here. The city of Dresden, this is Dresden here. Notice a beautiful, beautiful church here that's right in the center. Here's what the church looked like. It's actually the same photograph that you're seeing there. A beautiful church. It's called the Frauenkirchen, by the way. The ladies' church is what it translates to mean in German. It's kind of like Notre Dame, like the Virgin Mary Church. And after the Allied bombing here, and by the way, Dresden had no strategic purpose whatsoever. It was an innocent city, beautiful city, by the way. It's been completely rebuilt. But this is what Dresden looked like after that bombing there. It was a 2-day bombing raid by the United States and also by Great Britain. And I'll say it again, it had no purpose, no military value whatsoever there. And 135,000 civilians were killed. Could you do that today? I don't think you could. The American public would not stand for that. The world public would not stand for it. Let's see here. Here's another likeness here of Dresden. That's in the aftermath there, Dresden. It has since been rebuilt. This is what the church looks like today, the Frauenkirchen. Beautiful, beautiful church. And here, if you see the Frauenkirchen here in Dresden, large statue of Martin Luther. That's Martin Luther there, that's right in front of you there. German cities such as Cologne. This is what Cologne looked like in the aftermath. That church, which is Cologne Cathedral, we pronounce it Cologne, but Cologne Cathedral, it was damaged, but it was not destroyed, and the town today has been completely rebuilt. A very beautiful city, by the way. All right, I want to share something else with you folks. I'm going to still keep the camera off of me for the time being here. If you're a soldier, and some of you may have had opportunity to serve in the service branches. If you have, I'll give you a pat on the back here. There's nothing wrong with giving your part for your country. I believe in that. I think all of us as Americans, should be able to donate something to our country in the way of military service. But if you're a soldier, mail call is so important to you. Our modern day soldiers today, they use email, and it's different. But during the time I was in service, the only thing that you had in common with home was that of just regular mail. So every day you have mail call. mail call. And that you just live for mail call or for your chow time. All right, so I want to share a letter with you. One of my students gave this letter to me, and I made a copy of it. This is dated January the 10th, 1944, somewhere in Italy. And it's not written very well, and I always stumble through it as I go through this letter. And anyway, I'll save you some of the details with it. But this is a letter written from this sergeant, and he writes home. Dear Mother, just wonder how this will find you. As for myself, okay. Here's a little poem that I thought you would like as I'm writing this ad as I sit by the road awaiting for the mail to come in. There are others like I with their hopes hoping by as they hope and they pray and they grin. Their names are called out and some will shout, that's me, and he winks to his mate. There's nothing for some and their faces turn glum as they hope and they pray and they wait. We were all sent up here where there is no beer, no women, no parties, and no fun. Excuse me. All right, so we will continue with the letter here. Here we go. We'll all do our best, and we'll stick with the test with the so and son of a gun, which is second to now. Let's move on down to the end. So just write every day, and in this sweet way, and say you're happy and well. And when we are back with our rifle and pack, and you'll be waiting the day we arrive, and on that great day we can sit back and say it was your letters that kept us alive. Love, Quentin. Love, Quentin. Isn't that sweet? I love that very, very much. But let me tell you folks something. Quentin is not coming home. Everybody's worst nightmare. When that Army sedan pulls up into your driveway and a Western Union telegram is presented to you, general delivery, July the 3rd, in 1944 in Johnsville, Arkansas, the Secretary of War desires me to express his deepest regret that your son, Staff Sergeant Quentin Martin, was killed in action on the 2nd of June in Italy. The 2nd of June in Italy. All right, and also the consolation prize here, my friends. We get a photograph of the sergeant there, Quentin Martin, and the Purple Heart. The Purple Heart. All right, and I think that is a poor consolation prize. A letter from the president here. And actually, this is not from the president. And just an announcement. It's with sorrow and deep regret that this command learned from the adjutant general, and so forth and so forth. And the letter from the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Staff Sergeant Quentin Martin, in grateful memory here, died in the North African campaign. It was in Italy, down south of Rome, as a matter of fact. They're signed by the President. All right, so that is war in all of its reality here, folks. I spent 30 years in the military, 29 years and 4 months in the active and reserve service here, but I am not a person in support of war. As Army War College graduate myself, and a motto of the Army War College here is not to make war, but to preserve peace. But fortunately, or unfortunately, we have to maintain a strong military to preserve peace for you good folks and for our families here. Okay, as we come back next time together, you actually have your examination next time we come together, and then we'll come back for lecture number 18 here, folks, and we'll move on well into the third block of instruction. All right, we're going to bring this course to a close in a few weeks here. All right, thank you very much.